pivoting over to the ongoing Jaden Rashada saga, the Rashada saga. We've got reporting coming out. Brendan Huffman comes out, says, per a source close to the recruitment on Tuesday afternoon, Jaden Rashada officially filed a request for a release from his national letter of intent with Florida. We've had a lot of information that has continued to come out of this, but still the prediction that was on the Cover 3 podcast on Thursday that Jaden Rashada would not be playing for the Florida Gators certainly appears to be the case. We did not have a resolution in time for his enrollment for the spring semester, which means we're going to be delayed for his enrollment wherever he goes. And so this opens up a couple of interesting questions. Number one, if this does have to do with an NIL package that was promised but not delivered upon, what does that tell us about where we are in terms of the current NIL era? What does this mean in terms of Florida and its operations, both in the present in terms of trying to get recruits, but also in the future? And then also Jaden Rashada, where does he end up? So before we get to the Jaden Rashada, where does he end up? But I'm going to let you take first swing at this. Like, do you think that this was, in fact, a $13 million package that was promised but not delivered, and that was sort of the beginning of the breakdown between Florida and Rashada?
I do. So Orlando Sentinel reported it was $13 million. The Athletics reported it was $13 million. I have not seen the contract. My guess here, and I think you could call it like informed speculation, is that it was probably worth up to $13 million. I would be shocked if it was a guaranteed $13 million, but that's probably the max value of if everything works out, mutual option type stuff, I would guess, based on how these are written over 4 or 5 years type thing. Just clarify if you guys are listening for the first time, this was not $13 million per year, $13 million over basically a kid's career. That's clearly the reason for the breakdown here. Now, a couple questions I would have is, how in the hell did you get to a $13 million valuation for Rashada, who's like a top 50 player, on the composite, a good player, but he's a dude who's kind of a known commodity. He's going to turn 20 in August. He's not like a 17-year-old who's going to continue to grow a whole lot more, although he'll grow some. And he's it's a good arm. He's a good player. But if the reporting on Nico is correct at Tennessee and the Vols got him for $8 million, the idea that Rashada is getting 50% more is just crazy to me. So on the one hand, from a cost saving standpoint, you could say that Florida probably got off good here in that they did not sink $13 million into this kid. On the other hand, it raises major questions of, okay, how about what are other kids going to view Florida as? Do other recruits think Florida is broke as far as the ability to pay NIL? Is that going to hurt Billy Napier and their staff on the trail? How did you get to that valuation anyway? Was it really as simple as Florida's big money folks were pissed that Miami was stealing all their kids, and you're like, well, watch this. We're going to strike back. And then it's like, wait, what? What did we offer to strike back? There's a lot of questions you have to ask here. I do think $13 million would have been an overpay. The way that they got out of the deal is definitely kind of embarrassing and will probably reverberate throughout the recruiting industry.
That's, I think, the most interesting thing about this. I mean, it's a rough look for the Gators. And, if we hear about negative recruiting all the time, what do you think every other program and every other collective is telling anybody that they're competing with for the University of Florida? Like, good luck getting your money. I mean, I can hear them saying that. The other thing, too, and this is the whole newness of this environment, we have no idea what the structure of these deals are. Like, is there a chance it could be, 1.5 the first year, 2.5 the next, 3.5, and then there's like a balloon in the fourth because you're like, he's going to be turning pro. Like, you don't know what the exact numbers of these are. And until we do, I think there's a lot of speculation. And like, that's why I believe the 13, but I kind of don't believe the 13, like in actuality. You know what I mean? Like, I think there's got to be some funny money in there, just like there are when you read an NFL contract and, don't look for the total, look for the guaranteed money. I would have to think that some of these deals have similar language and similar setups, but I could be wrong.
If you win 2 national championships,
right. Could be a huge bonus.
Signing bonuses in there. That's how you could get to.
So he gets 1, 1, and 1, and then 10 if he gets a national title.
I would not structure it that way, though. Just to be clarified, I wouldn't go 1-1-1-10 because then the kid might suck and he might sit around for 4 years and be like, "Well,
wait for the 10.
senior year."
You'd have to mutual option it.
Tim Tebow got 2 national championships.
True, yeah.
Those.
So is it possible, and I saw this suggested by Andy Staples. Shout out to Andy. He's a huge fan of the show. I saw it Andy suggested, what if this didn't come from the Gator Collective? Like, this is one of the when there are universities that have multiple collectives. It is not necessarily like one unified collective. Like, it's possible that whoever put this together was acting like a little bit of going rogue just a little bit. I mean, his commitment to Florida initially was a stunner. We had, sorry, peel back the curtain. When we are given information or in strongly informed predictions that a player who is supposed to announce their commitment, we think we know what it's going to do. We do a little bit of legwork in advance. We put together some words so that we can be able to provide as much analysis as fast as possible for you. And for everybody that was putting together the content, this was going to be an announcement that Jaden Rashada was going to Miami. And it was just 100% rogue, out of nowhere. He's going to Florida. And I think even the announcement wasn't made when the announcement was supposed to be made. And all of that being off schedule, when I was thinking back to his initial commitment in October, I was like, that would make sense that somebody just came in rogue with a wild promise. To your point, Bud, was getting mad about Florida losing some of these battles and just like fired on something they couldn't back up without checking with whoever's in charge of the finances of the Gator Collective. And then all of a sudden you're put in this tight position. I think it's very possible that this is an example of what has happened in the current NIL era, where there can be so many different actors who can work with third parties and somebody in a recruit's camp to try to put together a package that might not check out with everybody who's in charge of the more functional and structured collective that is working with the university.
This is kind of the natural consequence, and we said this on Thursday's show, of you are employing people, except you're not employing them because they're not employees and you're not paying them. But the guys that make the product go have a ton of market value. It's obvious when you have a lot of kids making over $1 million now per year, but you're not paying them. So you're really relying as a school on a third party to run your payroll. And like, we know there are schools out there that freaking hate their collectives and the guys that run them. They're like, I hate this guy, right? And they don't want to deal with them, but it's a necessary evil, especially in the states where, like Florida, where the school cannot have much involvement with the collective. Now, I think there are other schools in the state that love the guys that run their collective, right? So it just depends. Or Florida, I guess we'll see if they reorg that thing, if they try to bring it all under one umbrella. I know they had Gator Collective, they had the Gator Guard. But I mean, if you're repping a kid and he signs with Florida now, do you want some more evidence up front that you're going to get your money?
Cash on delivery, please.
Or do you think his reps should have said, wait a second, 13 million is so just not beyond the pale, but so like unheard of in this market that should red flags have gone up then on his side and said, wait a second, 13 million.
Have you guys seen the Athletic timeline report where they said that December 7th, that this Gator Collective, Eddie Rojas, sent a letter of termination for the $13 million deal? Now that's in dispute, I guess. But like, then if you're Rashada, aren't you saying, whoa, like, wait a second, you're backing on the deal? So, I mean, all it makes sense when you start thinking about it from that perspective.
I think this kid wanted to play for Florida. I just obviously, like, there's major trust issues there now.
And we do have.
That's where, can I just say something real quick? Like you just said, he wanted to play for Florida. Did he want to go because he believes in Billy Napier, can develop as a quarterback because they're going to put him in a position to succeed? Or did he go because of the $13 million? And I'm sure, like, and that's where I think, if you were talking to high school kids and you were an advisor and a real advisor, not somebody that's going to take 20% of the 13 mil, but like somebody who's advising him as a future, I would say, man, you got to prioritize what you're looking at. Yes, you want to get paid because there's a going rate, but that cannot be the only reason why you're selecting something. You got to make sure you're comfortable with the staff, with the surroundings, with the school, with the team, with the culture, all of it. And then you find out like, okay, all right. And then you narrow your choices down to these 3 to 5 schools. And so if a team offers you 13, another offers you 10, maybe it's best to go to the place that goes 10. That's why I would just be careful of going to the highest bidder, because as we're seeing, and this might be the perfect example, the highest bidder may not even be real. So like, make sure you've got something good as well. And I don't know what I'd tell him now. Like, if, I don't know what advice I'd give him now, but I just think you got to be really careful making these decisions. And it's hard. Think about it. 17, 18-year-old, you're getting, people are in your pocket trying to take fees. I mean, it's really complicated. And I feel bad for some of these kids, because then they get criticized, for, choosing a place, and it's hard.
Where do we think Jaden Rashada ends up?
I would say either the West Coast, maybe a
He's
Washington.
from California, which is, again,
right.
hilarious about this, like Miami, Florida battle. It's like, it's from California.
Washington, Arizona State, maybe somewhere like that potentially, or alternatively, perhaps somewhere like an SMU, right? SMU has money to spend. They just lost Mordecai to Wisconsin, so maybe they have some stuff left over. I know he has some connections to SMU. I could see them, and that would be a big get for their staff.
Hey, maybe he ends up at Wisconsin. They haven't gotten enough quarterbacks.
DJ Lagway, 5-star quarterback, is on board for the 2024 cycle. Is he a strong enough prospect to be able to placate whatever frustrations are out there with a Graham Mertz, Jack Miller quarterback battle ongoing for the Florida starting quarterback job in 2023?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Lagway's a really good player.
Like, if I'm a Florida fan and I know Lagway's coming, this stinks. But at the same time, you're like, okay, we got to get to Lagway's arrival, and then this thing can really take off.
It's also like, are you going to get Lagway?
You think that after he committed, he could flip? He still hasn't put pen to paper. So
we got what, a whole year before signing day? What are your, like, Tom, have you run your stuff for next year yet?
No.
Like, my very early stuff has Florida at like 5.75 wins. I mean, I think in order to actually keep DJ Lagway, if I'm just reading tea leaves here, Florida needs to overachieve this year.
Wow.
Or it needs to take that $13 million they didn't give Rashada, and pull it up and give it to Lagway.
I mean, look, ask Mike Norvell how hard it is to recruit after 2 losing seasons in a row to start your tenure. Because that's kind of what Napier's facing, like if they don't overachieve a little bit.